All right, folks, how's it going? Welcome to the second episode of NRG Unplugged. My name is Max Kahn, and joining me tonight is Casey Loftman. Casey, how are things going?
Good. How about you?
They're really good. So we had a very eventful weekend last weekend, and we've got a very interesting World of Magic the Gathering going on. So we're just going to talk a little bit about it. And of course, what I'm referring to this weekend was the Nerd Rage Gaming Championship event. So let's get right into it. This weekend, 16 competitors battled it out at Nerd Rage Gaming Store in Buffalo Grove, Illinois, for their share of $2,500 and the title Nerd Rage Gaming Champion. Casey, were you watching the coverage this weekend at all?
Yeah, got to sort of duck in and out during the day. As you know, obviously because you were running it, it was a very long tournament.
Yeah.
But the great thing about it was, okay, first of all, I know everybody's going to think this is shameless self-promotion, all that, but we've got to give a shout out to Norm for putting this thing on.
Absolutely.
An undertaking like this is something that you normally wouldn't see a shop the size of Nerd Rage do. And it's been a series of really well-run tournaments. Everybody who's talked in it, who's played in them, has talked about how much fun they are. The championship was great. I mean, you look at some of the players that were in the championship. I mean, these are some of the more skilled players from this area. It's players you walk in and, oh, geez, that guy's here, that guy's here, that guy's here too. And in a 16-person tournament, that really kind of it amps up the tension a little bit because you know that you've got 16 really good players playing across different formats. Some of them are really good at Legacy, some of them are really good at Modern, some of them are good at everything. So yeah, it was a lot of fun to watch. The finals, styles make fights, and that was a matchup where Ben was obviously at a huge advantage against Noah because Bantal Drazi is pretty overwhelming favorite against Just Guy Control. But even then, just seeing two players like that, trying to grind their way through a finals after probably
like 14 hours.
Yeah, like 14 hours of Magic. I mean, it was unbelievable to watch because you could actually see these guys, really struggling through everything and seeing them trying to say, okay, how do I get out of this when, I can barely think straight.
All right, well, the finals sure was a great match, but let's back it up a little bit, talk about the championship round by round. So for those of you that didn't get to watch coverage or wanna break down, the first three rounds of the tournament were standard. And the decks that people submitted for standard, pretty run-of-the-mill. There weren't any crazy strategies. I know Matt Dow showed up with white-black humans, and John Caravita showed up with blue-white Panharmonicon, but those were among the rogue decks in the field. Most of the people in the event decided to play very stock lists, blue-white Flash, green-black Delirium, and the two people that came out on top 3-0 in standard actually are two legacy CT champions, Peter Tragos and Vincent Echeverria, which kind of surprised a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, Peter obviously, I know Peter better than I do Vincent, and obviously he's good across all formats, and I would imagine that Vincent is as well, but I just don't know him, so I can't really speak to that. But, you look at it, hey, look, Aetherworks Marvel, let's cheat some big dumb animals into play on turn 4, why not? And by the way, we'll run the table in standard while doing it.
Mm-hmm. And I luckily had the opportunity to talk to Vincent after 3-0ing his standard portion. He said that he is an avid Modern and Legacy player and does not play standard at all. So he wanted to pick up the best deck. He and his testing team thought that deck was Blue-White Flash, and it took him to 3-0. So I guess the testing paid off for Vincent.
Yeah, and the funny thing about this format is you've got your obviously best decks, and we talk about being this rock paper scissors format where Marvel beats black green Delirium, which beats blue white Flash, which beats Marvel, and that's true to a certain extent. But these aren't blowouts.
Mm-hmm.
These aren't 85-15 matchups. They're 55 or 60 to 45 or 40 to 45. So if you test a lot with the deck, if you're familiar with it, if you understand what the lines of play are, then you can pick up blue-white Flash and do okay against Delirium. And in a tournament where you know that you're only going to be playing 3 rounds of standard during the Swiss, it really doesn't incentivize you to try to do anything too crazy, because you don't want to show up with some completely rogue deck and then just get your teeth kicked in by Ashkana for 3 rounds in a row.
Yeah. So the two players here decided to go with Blue-White Flash and Aetherworks Marvel, two of the top-tier decks. Now what's funny is both of these two players went kind of off the wall in Modern. Both of the standard champions chose to play Lantern Control in Modern, and that didn't fare too well for them. Neither of them went 3-0 in the format, but Peter went 2-1 in Modern, and Vincent, I think, went 1-2 in Modern. But the two players that went 3-0 in Modern are Daniel Unger and Ben Miney, both of them on Bant Eldrazi. Are we going to talk about how Bant Eldrazi just 6-0'd the Modern portion of this event?
Yeah, sure. Why not? I mean, it's an entirely fair and reasonable deck, right? The thing about it is, and we'll talk about this a little bit more when we get to Ben in a minute. But Bant Eldrazi it's just a ridiculously powerful deck. It's there are decks that do things that fundamentally alter the mechanics of the game, like Infector Dredge. But when you're talking about decks that play by the rules, even if they aren't necessarily fair, I think Bant Eldrazi is probably the most powerful Modern deck out there. I mean, it can have draws that, even without Eye of Ugin, there are draws where it's just unbeatable.
And I think one of the reasons that Bant Eldrazi was so successful in this CT field was because of the way that the tournament was structured. So we had 16 players, and everybody know who everybody else in the tournament's going to be going into the event. And everybody wants to play a deck that they think is going to be best suited for the metagame. Because of this, we didn't see any players show up with Jund midrange or Abzan midrange, these Liliana the Veil strategies, because that's just 55% against every single deck in the format, right? And people really wanted decks that are going to bring them to that 3-0. They want the matchups that are 65 to 35 or 70 to 30, because that's how they're going to 3-0 the format, not a bunch of 55-45 matchups. So nobody showed up with Liliana the Veil decks. There were 0 copies of that card registered in the Modern decks of the event, and I think that's why Bant Eldrazi had such the strong showing that it did.
And the funny thing is that Modern is almost the opposite of Standard in that sense. Like you said, nobody wanted to bring a deck that was good against the field because the field is only going to be 3 rounds.
Right.
So in Modern, you can roll the dice a little bit because whatever you're going to be playing is going to be so much more powerful than what you could play in Standard that, hey, you could still win a bad matchup if your opponent stumbles at all. Mm-hmm. If you're playing Bant Eldrazi, it only matters to a certain extent what your opponent's playing, because if they have to mulligan to 5, if they miss their 3rd land drop, something like that, you could just run them over.
And that was not the only format Ben Miney had success in this weekend. Ben Miney also had success in Legacy, started off to a 2-0 finish before scooping Noah Cohen to the 3-0 finish in Legacy so that he would qualify for the top 8. So Noah Cohen, along with John Graham, were the 2 players that went 3-0 in the Legacy portion. Noah Cohen was playing a 4-color aggro loam strategy, and John Graham was on Death and Taxes. So these were granted spots 5 and 6 in the top 8. What did we think about Legacy at the championship this weekend?
Oh, look, let's be honest here. Legacy is quote, everybody's favorite format, right? And there's a reason for that. It's because it is some of the things that you can see in Legacy, you just don't see anywhere else. I mean, even Vintage is sometimes more reasonable than Legacy. Yeah. All right, as crazy as that sounds, but you look at the breakdown, and like you mentioned, you had Noah was on Loam, you had a couple players on Death and Taxes, you had a couple players on Lands, although not Ben Miney, who is normally on Lands. Spoiler alert. So you have this. What you look at with Legacy is you've got to be familiar with the deck. You can't just show up with something and expect to win with it. That's just not going to happen because there are so many different lines, so many different things to know, so many different things that can happen even in matchups that you've played a million times before. But then you look at, is it really any surprise that Noah went 3-0? I mean, he wanted Legacy CT to get in. He's been an excellent legacy player for a long time. He qualified for the Pro Tour by X2ing a Legacy GP. Mm-hmm. And then, John Graham, the funny thing about John is that he's kind of this unassuming guy that, you see him at a tournament, you're like, oh, hey, yeah, that's John. And the next thing you know, he just 2-0'd you. I mean, right. He's an excellent player. He really understands the game. A deck like Death and Taxes is a perfect choice for someone like him because it gives him game against everything, and it gives him a chance to think on his feet and figure out how to get out of trouble, which he's really, really good at.
And similar to Noah, John Graham's also a Pro Tour competitor. John Graham has played in 3 Pro Tours. He was a silver level pro. He recently played at Pro Tour Kaladesh. So it's funny to see that the two people with the most Pro Tour experience among the field, or the two people that have played at the Pro Tour most recently, are the two people 3-0ing Legacy. That's probably because they're some of the best Magic players in the field, and playing Legacy really rewards just good technical play.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know, you basically can almost never afford to stumble in Legacy. You know, if I would wager that more games of Legacy are lost than won, meaning that more people lose games in Legacy by making a mistake because it's such a technically challenging format than people winning by just flat out outplaying their opponent. You know, where both players do everything right and one player is just a little bit better. I would bet that it's more a case of, you know, maybe both players are good, one person makes a critical mistake on turn 3 that ends up costing them the game 2 or 3 turns later.
Absolutely. Well, Noah Cohen and John Graham both 3-0'd the Legacy portion to get into the top 8, but that's only 6 of the top 8. The other 2 players to make our top 8 were Chris Smith, who actually lost to John Graham in round 9. So he lost his direct admit, but got an at-large spot in the championship in the 8th seed. And then Dakota Clark also, I think he went 2-1 in all formats, went 6-3 throughout the event, or 6-3-1, or 5-3-1. Maybe I think he intentional drew with Peter Tragos, one of his good friends, in the round. But they both made top 8. And I think it's really cool to see the 2 players that won the first 2 CTs, Chris and Dakota, are the 2 people that came back 10 months later and just had a good overall showing in the event to make the top 8.
It's interesting to see that, you know, you have these players who qualify just by showing up every time and, you know, putting up a decent finish, you know, top 8ing one here and there. Then you have someone like Dakota who's been playing with house money for the last several months because no matter what happened, he was in the championship.
And also, I want to commend Chris Smith. He came into the top 8 as the 8th seed with some of the weirdest deck choices I've ever seen, but it really paid off for him. His modern deck was the Sun and Moon deck, which is the red-white Blood Moon Nahiri Chandra control deck. And then his Legacy deck was a Nick Fit deck featuring 4 Siege Rhino and Atraxa from the Commander deck, the Everything But Red legendary creature, which is just like keyword soup. And it's funny, Vincent and Chris actually had the same deck in Legacy, the Atraxa Nick Fit deck, which when I was going through deck lists, Chris's deck came in first, and I was like, oh, that's a really unique deck. I'm really proud of Chris for having the guts to come to the tournament with this. And then Vincent submitted the same deck list, and I was astounded. It was so cool.
Hey, look, the deck list had 4 Siege Rhino, okay? The other 56 cards are basically irrelevant.
So if you want to see the deck lists from the tournament, be sure to check out nerdragegaming.com. All the deck lists are already up there. So if you want to see this crazy 4 Siege Rhino Legacy deck or any of the other decks that the 16 competitors played, be sure to check those out online. So we get into the top 8, and the top 8 is very interesting. Not all people get to play the same format. So the higher seed actually got to choose what format they wanted to play for the event. And in the top 8 rounds, the higher seeds, 2 of them chose to play Standard. One of them chose to play Legacy, and one of them chose to be on the play. That was John Graham chose to be on the play, and then Daniel Unger chose to play Legacy. So it was a split format top 8, 2 matches playing Standard, 2 matches playing Legacy. What did we think about those choices that the players made?
Well, the one thing that the players had an advantage of here is that they had the deck lists. Right. So they could go through and say, all right, well, how do I feel about this matchup? Okay, so you take a look at Peter Tragos versus Vincent Echeverria. All right, Peter has the choice. Does he really want to play a Lantern Control Mirror in Modern? Does he really want to play Earthworks Marvel against Blue White Flash? So really his only choice is, okay, I'm going to play Legacy. And, you know, with that extra information, I think it adds so much to the decision-making process, because normally it's just a snap, oh yeah, hey, I'm one of the top 4 seeds, therefore I get to be on the play. Woo. But in this case, you know, giving up the play was probably the right idea most of the time, because if you have one just slam dunk matchup in the top 8, you've pretty much got to take it, because you don't want to take a chance of saying, well, I'll be on the play, hoping that your opponent doesn't realize what a huge advantage they have in one of the formats or something like that.
Right.
So I love that it added this extra layer of strategy of, okay, if all the matchups are a coin flip, I can take the play. But if there's one really bad matchup, I better do everything I can to dodge it.
And what I think was super fascinating about what happened, how the matches played out, The higher seed chose to play or chose to pick the format 3 out of the 4 matches, and the only higher seed that chose to pick the play was John Graham, who ended up losing his quarterfinal matchup to Daniel Unger, whereas all the other 3 people that chose format won their matchup. So all 4 people that chose what format they wanted to play ended up winning their quarterfinal matchup, which goes to show how important this decision was and how it wasn't supposed to be wasted. We get to the top 4, and now Peter Tragos is playing against Noah Cohen off camera. And Peter Tragos is looking at the decks. He already chose Legacy, right? So it's either Standard or Modern. And Noah Cohen already chose Legacy. So if he chooses to play or draw, he knows that Noah can't play Legacy. And in Modern, they're looking at the deck lists, and Peter does not want to play Lantern Control at all. But he also doesn't want to play against Noah's Standard deck. Noah's Standard deck is that green-red Bristling Hydra, Electrostatic Pummeler energy deck. So Peter, in the top 4, just chooses to be on the play. Because to him, it doesn't really matter what that matchup is going to be. He feels unfavored either way. So he chooses the play and hopes Noah makes the wrong decision. Whereas in the other side of the bracket, Ben Miney versus Daniel Unger, it was a Bant Eldrazi mirror in Modern. And Ben knew that was what Daniel was likely to pick. So Ben Miney chooses to play Modern. Lets Daniel Unger be on the draw because in Standard, Ben Miney with Aetherworks Marvel did not feel advantage against Daniel's Standard deck, which was Black-Green Lyrium.
Yeah, so, again, we see this idea of, an extra layer of strategy. You look at Ben choosing to play Modern, putting himself on the draw in the mirror, but he knows that he's running main deck Engineered Explosives, and he knows that Daniel is not. So he thinks that gives him an advantage, and that even if he's being on the draw in the matchup, he still has an edge because he's got something that Daniel doesn't have. Mm-hmm. On the other side, you look at Peter, he's in, like I mentioned before, one of those coin flip situations where he doesn't love either matchup. So might as well take the play, hope that Noah stumbles, hope that something goes wrong, hope that Noah forgets how to play Magic. You never know. It's been a long day. But what we see once again is there's a lot more thought put into it than just simply sitting down and saying, I'm the higher seed, I'll be on the play.
So everybody saw that Bant Eldrazi mirror on camera in the semifinals. What you guys didn't see at home was the other semifinal matchup. And Peter Tragos chose to be on the play with his Standard Aetherworks Marvel deck versus Noah's Green-Red Energy deck. And Peter Tragos did not play Magic in the semifinals. He mulliganed to 6 in game 1 on the play, kept a 1-lander, lost on turn 4. He was like 38'd by an Electrostatic Pummeler or something. And game number 2 was not much better. Noah had a huge Bristling Hydra, and Peter Tragos never recovered. So luckily, you guys got to see the good match of the semifinals on camera, because the other match, Noah Cohen blows out Peter Tragos, which brings us to our finals match. And Ben Miney doesn't want to play Standard. He does not want to play the Aetherworks Marvel deck against Noah Cohen's energy deck, because it just demolished Peter Tragos on the same Aetherworks Marvel deck in the semifinals. So Ben Miney just chooses to be on the play. And then Noah Cohen, who has already chosen Standard against Peter Tragos, is forced to choose Modern because he already chose Legacy in his other match. And there you go. We've got Jeskai Control versus Bant Eldrazi in the finals with Ben Miney on the draw. Well, on the play, sorry.
And the thing about it is, it couldn't have worked out better for Ben in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, he doesn't want to run Marvel into Green-Red Energy because, yeah, sure, Marvel can beat Green-Red Energy, but Marvel also has a tendency, to draw the wrong half of the deck sometimes, whiff a couple of times on activations, and you just can't do that against Green-Red Energy. You'll just get blown out, as you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And, you look at the situation that Ben finds himself in, it's like, okay, don't want to play Standard. Pretty sure that just being on the play is the right choice here. And it works out perfectly because the Modern matchup is hugely in his favor.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Bant Eldrazi versus Jeskai Control, I think that anybody in the tournament would have taken that if they were on the Bant Eldrazi side.
And I know that Noah Cohen actually felt fine about his Bant Eldrazi matchup. His deck was playing some number of main deck Logic Knots and was playing Johnny Vengeance. So it wasn't your typical control deck. It wasn't as controlling. It was much more proactive than the other decks. So he felt fine in the matchup, but Ben Miney, as you guys saw on camera, rolled over Noah Cohen in that game too, just playing so many threats. He even had 3 or 4 cards in his hand the entire game while Noah was stumbling for answers. And because of that, Ben Miney was crowned in Nerd Rage Gaming 2016 champion.
Yeah, and the thing is, Noah's list was probably about as good as it could be against Bant Eldrazi, but Bant Eldrazi gets to run a card named Cavern of Souls, and that's just death for control decks in Modern. But so moving on. So we have Ben Miney ending up being the champion, and that's really kind of appropriate for him for a couple of reasons. The first being that Ben was the last player into the field. He was the last at-large player to qualify. He didn't actually win any of the CTs. He just put up a string of steady performances, and then he shows up in a field that has a whole bunch of people that everybody looking from the outside would pick, and he just sort of rolls everybody over. And that's kind of Ben's thing. He's not one of these people where he's not one of those people with that huge outsized personality or something like that where everybody's going to say, oh, hey, it's Ben. Yeah, everybody knows Ben. But he's a really good player. He's a really good technical player. He's he thinks well on his feet. He's really good at hanging in there for a long day, which is obviously a big plus in a tournament like this. So I really couldn't be happier for Ben. For one reason, he is a member of Team NRG. He writes for us on the website, and I love reading his thought processes when he talks about
Absolutely.
how he prepares for tournaments, how he sets up his deck choices, things like that. I mentioned earlier that hey, Ben's always on lands, right? No, Ben was on Miracles for this tournament. Miracles with main deck Blood Moon. I guarantee you that nobody in the field saw that coming, even though pretty much everybody knows Ben and knows him pretty well. Now, think about this for a second. He normally plays lands in Legacy, and he decides to audible to Miracles, and then plays it really well. So what does that tell you about Ben's skill as a player and his ability to play a bunch of different styles? Look at the decks that he was playing. He's playing Aetherworks Marvel in Standard. He's playing Bant Eldrazi in Modern. He's playing Miracles in Legacy. These are all very different kind of decks, but they're all very powerful decks that a good player can do some serious damage with, and that's what he did.
Yeah, absolutely. If you guys want to read more about Ben Miney's championship run at the Nerd Rage Gaming Championship in 2016, he wrote an article on Nerd Rage Gaming website a few days ago now. So be sure to check that out. It was a fantastic article. He goes through his thought process. He goes through why he chose the decks he did. And if you want to hear it from the Nerd Rage Gaming Championship himself, feel free to head on over to the website and take a look at that. So Ben Miney, of course, by winning the tournament, qualifies for the 2017 championship. And he's the first player into it, and I know he's really excited about that. It meant a lot for him.
Yeah, that was one of the big things that he was really happy about. There were a couple of things. The first being that just that feeling of, hey, I took down 15 other really good players in a fairly prestigious tournament, and that's a big accomplishment. You're going to feel like you've done something with that kind of win. This wasn't a 14-person PPTQ that he won.
Yeah.
It was a 16-person basically tournament of champions, which is pretty good. And then the other thing, like you said, hey, Ben can do whatever he wants next year in the CTs.
Mm-hmm.
He can experiment. He can try, some sort of, whatever crazy modern brew he can come up with, or, he could try running red deck wins in Standard. He can really use it. Or, knowing Ben, he'll show up and still try to top 8 every single one of them. But he has options, and he doesn't have to worry about not making the championship.
Absolutely. Ben Miney, of course, well-deserved champion. We're really excited at Nerd Rage Gaming that one of our own team members actually took down the championship. So congratulations to Ben and all of his accomplishments. But there's one thing that I want to take away from Ben's championship, and I'm sorry in advance, but that thing is the issues in Standard right now. Ben Miney was playing Aetherworks Marvel in Standard, which, I don't know about you, but just does not seem fair. And we were talking about this before the show, how I was like, Emrakul and Aetherworks Marvel, not good for the format, and Casey's like, oh, I love those cards. So before I tear these cards apart, Casey, you got to build them up for me.
Okay, first of all, I want to make something perfectly clear to everybody watching. Yes, I love those cards. No, I never said they were good for the format, because they're not. Okay, here's the thing, all right? How can you not love a 13/13 Flying Trample Mindslaver that you can maybe cast for like 6, or just cheat into play on turn 4.
Well,
okay, I can see how you wouldn't necessarily love that, but both Emrakul and Aetherworks Marvel, they appeal to everybody's inner Timmy, everybody's inner. I want to do just preposterously stupid things and get rewarded for it. Now that's fun. I mean, I ran Aetherworks Marvel to PPGQ myself this last weekend, but it's not good for the format. It's not good for the format at all because being able to cast, not just put into play, but cast an Emrakul or an Ulamog that early in the game is fundamentally game breaking. It's basically pay 4 mana, spend 6 energy, I win the game. And the weird thing is that super early in the game, Ulamog is more backbreaking than Emrakul is because you might have just nuked half their board, or even more if you're on the play. But then you start getting into those situations where, okay, it's turn 6, turn 7, and I haven't found my Aetherworks Marvel yet. And, oh, look, I just top-decked an Emrakul. Mm-hmm. I win. It's not good for the format at all, Max. I'm not even going to try to defend that.
Okay.
Because as someone who plays the game a lot and who still has that desire to occasionally do really silly things, yeah, I love the cards. As someone who wants to see a healthy standard format, no, they're not good for that at all.
All right, if you viewers at home want to see exactly what Emrakul is doing to the format, take a look at the round 3 feature match from the championship. It's Ben Miney, the eventual winner, versus Peter Tragos, the eventual semifinalist, in standard, going for the 3-0, playing the Naya Aetherworks Mirror. And not only is this like an Aetherworks Mirror, so whoever's on the play is likely to win unless they get super unlucky with their Wheel of Fortune, right? But they're both playing Sigarda, which gives themselves hexproof, so they can't be Emrakul'd by the other player. So Emrakul flipped off a Marvel doesn't even do anything except for a big trampler, but that just gets pummeled by either Nahiri or Declaration in Stone. So the matchup just went on and on forever until one of the players took over the board with Sigarda, which was just miserable to watch.
It is. It absolutely is. I mean, Aetherworks Marvel Mirrors are not good. They're not fun. I mean, I've played them before, being on Tamer versus Naya or Naya versus Tamer, and it's not fun at all. It is, did I get my Marvel out before you did? Did I hit something off of my Marvel? Did I avoid walking right into your ceremonious rejection? That sort of thing. It's just not skill testing at all. It really isn't. And, I know that some people will probably be like, oh, well, there's still a lot of skill in, sequencing your energy plays and all that. You know what? You're wrong. It is not hard to activate an Aetherworks Marvel and then cast an Emrakul. It's just not. There's no thought that goes into it. There's no skill that goes into it. It's just spin the wheel, and your opponent has to hope that you miss. I mean, I played a match this weekend at the PPTQ. It was against vehicles. Game 1. Hey, look. Turn 3, Aetherworks Marvel. Turn 4, spin it, hit Ulamog, wipe your board. Oh, yeah. Yeah, okay, we're going to Game 2.
Magic's fun.
Game 2. Yeah, Magic's great. Skill game. #skill game. Game 2, he blows me out because, I have to mulligan. I can never find a Marvel. I cast 1 Kozilek's Return. He's like, don't care. You just killed 2 Scrap Heap Scroungers. We go to Game 3. I never find a Marvel. I end up dying because of it. Because at any point, if I find the Marvel and cast it and hit something, there's no way he wins the game. And it doesn't matter if I hit an Emrakul. It doesn't matter if I hit an Ulamog. It doesn't matter if I hit an Ishkana. If I hit any one of those things, there's no way that he's going to be in a position to rebuild. And there's just nothing fun about that.
Well, as you can tell, both of us are very enthusiastic about the state the standard's in. And we talked about it a little bit on the last episode about how this new standard rotation certainly isn't going to help. But as we can see from the Aetherworks Marvel deck list we've got right here, nothing cool. It's a bunch of energy makers, Aetherworks Marvel, and a bunch of Giant Eldrazi. And we're even seeing Emrakul in other decks too, like the green-black Delirium list, which is just, they play one Emrakul, a bunch of ways to tutor for it, like Traverse the Uvenwald and Liliana to get it back, and whoever casts their Emrakul first wins. So that's what Standard's evolved into right now, and I'm not very optimistic about it.
The thing is, this is one of those times of year where Standard's really in a dead point. It's getting close to the end of the year. It's the holidays. Nobody's really running a lot of tournaments. You've got a new set that's coming out in just a couple of weeks. So I've actually been playing around a lot with Frontier.
Mm-hmm.
Max, can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you. I'm just not very happy about what you're about to say, but go on.
Now, hang on. I promise you that I can stick the landing on this.
Okay.
The thing about Frontier, and for those of you who don't know, it's a format that it's come out of a shop in Japan that kind of created it and has been having tournaments for it and everything. Basically, everything from Magic 2015 to present is legal. So it's basically Cons Battle for Zendikar block standard. All right? It is. I'll admit it. And the two decks that I've been playing around with are Jeskai Black and Martyr Green, because those are two of the decks that I really liked in its standard format. And I've played a bunch of games with it, and I have to say this. It will probably never make it as an actual format, but at this exact point in time, it's fun. And the reason that it's fun is that basically every game is a grindy mid-range mirror. Or basically every game is a grindy mid-range match. Now, I see that from Max's reaction, he doesn't necessarily think that's fun, but let me explain here. There's no Aetherworks Marvel. There's no Smuggler's Copter. There's no Gideon on turn 4. At least I haven't run into him yet. What there is a bunch of games that go long, that are incredibly interactive, and where not only do you feel like you're always one draw step away from getting back in the game, you feel like your opponent is always one draw step away from getting back in the game. And that adds a lot in terms of the depth of the play, how much fun it is, how intense it is. It's not just spin the wheel and win or lose. Okay? So, yeah, basically what I'm saying is put Siege Rhino back in the format and everything will be good again.
Okay,
I
much
don't think that's
fun.
what the takeaway is supposed to be here.
As much fun as bashing Siege Rhinos into each other is, right? And don't worry, I played Abzan that entire format. I loved it. But it just seems too much of the same. Like, why would I want to go back to a time where I'm just bashing Siege Rhinos into each other and casting Dig Through Times and playing Rally the Ancestors with Jace? Like, it just doesn't seem like anything unique. Right now, it just seems like the previous standard format plus Satyr Wayfinder.
But, the thing is that it's not even necessarily the decks. It's not even necessarily the format, because I have a feeling that as the format expands by, another set, it's probably just going to turn into some sort of degenerate mess, as these formats always do.
Especially without a ban list like it doesn't
said,
have right now.
Well, yeah, hey, torrential gear hulking a dig through time is entirely fair and
not
balanced,
fair,
right?
Not fair. Stop it.
Okay, fine, not fair. But we don't really have that style of gameplay in Standard right now. It's a lot of aggro decks. It's a lot of, did my Gideon resolve? Well, yeah. Want to go to game 2? Did my Aetherworks Marvel resolve? Yeah? Oh, you're actually going to see if I hit something off of it? Oh, guess what I did? Oh, you're playing a slow deck? I guess I'll just run you over with vehicles.
Sure.
There's just not any expectation that you're going to get to play Magic. It's like you said in that matchup with Noah and Peter in the semifinals. Peter just didn't get to play Magic.
Yep.
And, if he had drawn a little bit differently in his opening hands, Noah might not have gotten to play Magic. So this standard format is just so potentially swingy one way or another that unless you're playing a mirror match, and only certain mirror matches that, you don't ever feel like you get a chance to sit down and play a deep, interactive, entertaining game of Magic.
All right, well, I'll make one promise to the viewers at home. We will not be having a Frontier CT in 2017, so don't worry about it. We will be taking a break from Standard for a little bit. Our first CT in January is a Modern CT, so Standard won't be returning to the CT series until February. So we've got about a month and a half break from Aetherworks Marvel and Emrakul. Aether Revolt will be in the format by then, so maybe we'll see some cool new vehicles or cool new planeswalkers like Tezzeret and Ajani take the stage. Let's move on to the next segment.
Yes, please.
So the last thing we wanted to do is talk about the year that was in Nerd Rage Gaming. We have had one of the best years in Nerd Rage Gaming. This is like our third or fourth year in business now, and this year has been everything that we wanted it to be. We've hosted 3 of the SCG Regionals events in Chicago. We've started our own tournament series, the Nerd Rage Gaming Championship Series. We've launched our online articles that Casey Loftman's the editor of at articles.nerdragegaming.com. And we've broadcast on Twitch at twitch.tv/nerdragegaming live. And we started this show. And we just wanted to thank you guys so much for your continuous support. We had almost 300 players, unique players, play in our CT series last year. And we had over 1,000 players play in our 3 regionals events, which was just nuts. And that wouldn't have happened without you guys. So thank you guys so much for supporting Nerd Rage Gaming. And for everything that you do to coming out to our events, to reading our articles on Facebook. It means a lot.
Yeah, and obviously the part of this that's nearest and dearest to my heart is the website, because that's something that I launched this year with a huge assist from Norm, obviously, and it's been incredibly rewarding. We've had a number of really good articles. We've had some interesting things, some roundtable discussions, things like that. We have everything from Max's Judge columns to Jordan Pollock doing MTG Finance. We've got Matt Bemonte and Ben Miney and Justin Brickman writing for us across Standard, Modern, Legacy. We've got a little bit of everything, and I really look forward to what we're going to be able to do in 2017, because based on the feedback that I get, based on people saying, hey, I really like that article, or, hey, why don't you guys, write about this? Heck, we might even add Frontier as a regular feature, Max. Right? Right?
No.
You're going to tell Norm, aren't you?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, so we might not have Frontier, but I make no promises. But what I can tell you is this. We've got a good crew of writers. We've got Norm, believes deeply in this, really wants to see this succeed, and we're going to do some cool stuff in 2017. I promise that. So keep tuning in, articles.nerdragegaming.com. Also, if you haven't been to the Nerd Rage website recently, it's been redesigned so that we now have a scrolling feed on the main page of the most recent articles, which is pretty cool. Right now, you can go see Ben Miney with his brand new playmat, which was surely the highlight of his weekend.
Absolutely.
And, it's been a lot of fun getting this thing off the ground, and now I think we're at a point where we can really start doing some interesting stuff.
Absolutely. Well, that's all the time we have for this episode of NRG Unplugged. We've been going for, I don't know, over 20 minutes now, so that's more time than I want to spend editing. Oh, God. Please never say that again. We talked about the championship format. Congrats again to Ben Miney for taking it down. He qualified for the 2017 championship, and you can too by playing in our CT series next year. New and improved, we've got at least 10 of our regular CTs, CT Plus events, Super CTs, and our team-sealed CTs that's coming next year. So be sure to stay tuned to NRG Unplugged to learn all about that. We talked about Standard and Casey's weird ideas about Frontier. And then we thank you guys so much, as always, for everything you do to keep Nerd Rage Gaming afloat. All right, folks, for Casey Loftman, my name is Max Kahn, and we'll see you guys next time.